Namitta Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy, Text 45. Rishimadyam nabatnati Rishimadyam nabatnati Papiyam stvam rajogunaha Papiyam stvam rajogunaha Yanmanomai nirbadham Yanmanomai nirbadham Prajasam srichatopite Prajasam srichatopite Rishimadyam nabadnati Papiyam stvam rajogunaha Yanmanomai nirbadham Prajasam srichatopite Rishimadyam nabadnati Papiyam stvam rajogunaha Yanmanomai nirbadham Prajasam srichatopite Rishimadyam nabadnati Papiyam stvam rajogunaha Yanmanomai nirbadham Prajasam srichatopite Anyone else? Much. Papiyam stvam rajogunaha Manomai nirbadham Jasam srichatopite Rishim unto the great sage Adyam, the first of the kind, Na, never, but Nati, encroaches, Papiyan, vicious, Tvam, you, Rajaguna, the material mode of passion, Yet, because, Manaha, mind, Mayi, in me, Nirbadham, compact in, Raja, progeny, samsrichataha, generating, api, in spite of, te, your. Translation and purport by Divine Grace of Acharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. You are the original Rishi, and because your mind is always fixed on me, even though you will be engaged in generating various progeny, the vicious mode of passion will never encroach upon you. Purport. The same assurance is given to Brahma in the second canto, chapter 9, verse 36. Being so favored by the Lord, Brahma's schemes and plans are all infallible. If sometimes Brahma is seen to be bewildered, as in the 10th canto he is bewildered by seeing the action of the internal potency, that is also for his further advancement in transcendental service. Arjuna is found to be similarly bewildered. All such bewilderment of the pure devotees of the Lord is specifically meant for their further advancement in knowledge of the Lord. Omagyanatirim timirandasya grananshana shalakya chakshurun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahagana Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamshcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshvari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Mancha Kalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you for coming to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we are discussing chapter 9 called Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy, because as we heard in the previous chapter, after he performed his tapasya as per the instructions and the will of the Lord, he got the beautiful darshan of the Lord and his spiritual abode. And so then he offered beautiful prayers, which we were hearing in this chapter. And now we are towards the end of the chapter, where we heard the last series of verses of how the Lord responds to Lord Brahma. And it's actually amazing how, we see in all the dealings, throughout Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, of course, as well, even more intensely so, how loving the Lord is and his devotees. And so here also we heard how the Lord could understand that Lord Brahma was anxious of being, he was, at that time, there was only him and the Lord, and he knew he had this tremendous service that the Lord wanted him to do the secondary creation of all the foreign planetary systems, all the living entities. So he was, even though being a pure devotee of the Lord, still he was a bit anxious about how he'll be able to do that, this huge task. And not only do it, but at the same time not becoming proud, not falling into the trap of thinking himself to be the doer of these wonderful deeds that he had to perform. And so the Lord is very reassuring throughout all these verses that we were hearing. Like in the very first verse, he told him that what you are begging for me has already been granted before. And similarly, throughout these verses, he was at the same time instructing the Lord, but he was telling in a way that actually, don't worry, I know you're going to do it. It's already, I'm blessing you. It's already a given that you won't fail. You will always remain pure in your consciousness, and you will be able to do all this service. And one main instruction that we heard in several verses was how he explained to him, as we discussed the Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so beautifully propounded, giving us this full understanding of the Lord, of his energies and of his personality at the same time. First I'll talk on that mainly today. First, let's briefly go to today's verse, where he's reassuring him specifically that he won't be overcome by the vicious mode of passion, and even when generating all this progeny, because for generating progeny, for creating anything, a mode of passion is required, which he has to do as a service here, but the Lord is assuring him that still you won't get like your consciousness won't get polluted by this mode of passion. And Prabhupada quotes here the famous pastime of Brahma Vimohan Lila, where, as we know, Lord Brahma, when seeing that this Supreme Personality of Godhead is behaving in such a apparently mundane way, and so too simple to be the Supreme Lord, having lunch with his cowherd boyfriends, eating with his left hand and all of that, that he tested him, and by apparently stealing the cowherd boys and calves, and Krishna of course showed him the mercy there. And Prabhupada explains here today actually that this, from those kind of verses like today's verse, and he is quoting that in the second chapter as well, the Lord assured Lord Brahma similarly, that we can understand Lord Brahma was not overcome by Mahamaya, like one devotee was asking in Ganeshambo's class recently about, I think you're right, Rataprim Bro, about Mahamaya and Yogamaya. So Lord Brahma, Srila Prabhupada is explaining today here, he can never be overcome by Mahamaya because he is a pure devotee, and he got the personal reassurance from the Lord at the very dawn of creation. So there's no question of him being bewildered by Mahamaya. But then what was still this Brahma Vimohan Lila, so he got bewildered, but that was, we can understand, by the Lord, simply by the Lord's will. And so the Lord used his internal potency, Yogamaya. And so why does the Lord like that? Sometimes, like Prabhupada also quotes, even for Arjuna, as we know, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the mercy of the Lord putting his pure devotee apparently into illusion. And so it's, from that we can see it's for our benefit that the Lord does like that he teaches lessons to us who do get overcome by Mahamaya, that showing that even great personalities like Lord Brahma can become bewildered. So how careful we have to be. And Prabhupada explains here today that also for the devotee's further spiritual advancement, like in the case of Lord Brahma, we know that even though right from the start he got also darshan of not only of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, but also of Krishna, and of Golok Vrindavan even, the topmost spiritual dham, but still he was attached to Krishna more as in awe and reverence. And so he could not fully understand actually he had theoretically understanding, obviously, that the topmost devotees are those in Golok Vrindavan. But to give him further realization for that, so that Lord Krishna put him into illusion in Brahma Vimohan Lila, because there, he showed him then that this simple dealings, externally apparently just simple dealings with his devotees in Golok Vrindavan, that is the topmost perfection, that is the highest love, and that they are way beyond any other greatly learned scholars, devotees who may be attached to great knowledge and to great opulence of the Lord. So in that way he showed him that even we know Krishna is also in Dwarka and in Mathura and in Mathura. So I thought there was a third dham of Krishna. And then of course other expansions, Ayodhya and Lord Narayan and all the Kunta. But Krishna himself, so he is also in Dwarka, but there it's more in awe and reverence. But so superior to him is Rajendra Nandana, Krishna in Vrindavan. And so that's what Lord Brahma could fully realize by the Lord's mercy, by putting him into Yogamaya. So as we know, so for us it's our aspiration to come under the control of Yogamaya, to get bewildered by Yogamaya. And you can see even Krishna himself, he likes to be under Yogamaya, getting bewildered even, apparently, sometimes. Like in that very pastime, which leads up to Brahma Vimohan Lila is, the pastime of Aghasura, that because then Aghasura was one of those very powerful demons, so that was one reason why Lord Brahma was bewildered, thinking, how can it be the same boy just just a little while ago, he killed this extremely powerful demon whom all the demigods were afraid of, and now he's eating lunch with his cowherd boys, with his left hand taking the apparently muchi prasad from the other cowherd boys. Obviously, there's nothing like muchi for them because they're all fully spiritual and in the highest consciousness. But yeah, apparently it seemed like that. So he got bewildered like that. But yeah, in this pastime with Aghasura, Krishna himself, he enjoyed being bewildered because when as the gopas thinking, like some of them thinking, yeah, this is a snake, others thinking, no, it's a playground, and deciding then at the end, well, in any case, Krishna is there, so we don't need to worry. They just went inside his open mouth, and yeah, at that time, the acharyas explained that Krishna was actually bewildered, thinking, well, what should I do now? All of my friends are inside this great demon in the form of a huge snake. So if I kill Aghasura, then my friends will be killed as well. So what can I do? So he enjoys even. Krishna himself enjoys being bewildered like that sometimes. And obviously also in Damodar Lila, we see how he's fully acting under Yoga Maya of enjoying being in great fear of Mother Yashoda, so much so that he, and before that also in anger, like obviously we know pure devotees cannot become angry, so what to speak of Krishna in terms of material anger, but in spiritual anger, he was also exhibiting that there, crying in great anger and then running away in great fear. So, but to realize that, it's not a cheap thing to come under Yoga Maya. We have to follow sadhana bhakti, and for that it's important also to have the foundational knowledge of it, which, as I mentioned, as the Lord explained here, the Lord Brahma is foundational, this achintya beda beda tattva, to really understand that. And I was, last week I was reading the 7th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, and before that I hadn't realized that actually from this chapter also we can see so much how Krishna explains this principle of simultaneous oneness and difference of him, and how to understand it in more detail. So, we will try to take out some of that. So, as we know in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explained mainly Dhyan Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, how to attain him through the meditational process for those who are attached to yoga. But then he concluded that Yoganabam Pisarvisham Matkatinantaratmana Shradavan Bachate Yomam Tam Samayukta Tamomataha. That the supreme yogi is the one who is always abiding in me and who is serving me with faith. So, in other words, the bhakti yogi. And so that's the leading up then to the middle 6 chapters, which focus on bhakti yoga, which are the as Prabhupada explains in the purports there, that it's like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think he gives this analogy of Bhagavad Gita being like a jewel box, where the outer covering, or like the foundation, the base is the first 6 chapters, giving us the foundation, like Atma Jnana and so on, and Karma Yoga, and then the top lid is the last 6 chapters, which are mainly on Jnana, and the inside is the jewel itself, or the diamond, which is purely about pure devotional service, which are the middle 6 chapters. So Krishna himself, you can see there, he's getting kind of excited of now finally he can go on to speak on pure devotional service. So from 7th chapter onwards, so he's starting, and because like we know in 6th chapter, Arjuna himself, he also expressed how impractical and almost impossible it seems, this process of Ashtanga Yoga, for example, like to be able to control the mind. He pointed out Mana Chanchalam Himana Krishna, that it's like practically impossible and more difficult to control the mind than to control the wind, and so forth. And so now Krishna gives in 7th chapter a much more simple process and more powerful process, that of pure devotional service, starting with hearing, Shravanam. So in 7.1, and also in terms, we know last verse, 6th chapter was Mat Gatinantaratmana, so those who abide in me. So directly to that, Krishna then answers, so to say, or continues in 7.1, Shri Bhagavana Vacha, that Mai Asakta Manapartha, that to have your mind fully fixed on me. I'll explain to you now how that is. So he says, Mai Asakta Manapartha Yogam Yonchan Madashrayaha Asamshayam Samakram Yam Yataki Asasiddhachtirino. So now here, Arjuna, how you can fix your mind fully in me, engaging in what kind of yoga? In Yogam Yuncham Mad Ashrayaha. In that kind of yoga where your only shelter is me, personally, me, Krishna. And Asamshayam Samakramam, that hearing from me, Krishna, the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Authority, then there's Asamshayam, then there's no doubt. Then if I give you directly the highest knowledge. And Samagramam, that I give it to you in full. And Prabhupada explains there specifically that means not just, we know Supreme Truth as Absolute Truth as those three features of Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So knowing that, you can understand all those three features. And yeah, Yatagi Yasyanasitachtrunu, so now hear that from me. And then in the second verse, he further substantiates of how amazing this knowledge is. He says, Yanam Dhyaham Savikyanam Pravakshama. Let's mix up. The 9th chapter starts very similarly, and is in many aspects actually. 9th chapter is very similar to 7th chapter. Just goes on a bit more deeply into pure devotional service. So, the second verse, Jnanam Tiham Savikyanam Idam Vakshyam Asheshataha Yatkyatvaneha Puhyan Yatavyam Avashishyate. So then he explains that not only will I tell you knowledge, theoretical knowledge, jnanam, and Prabhupada translates it there as phenomenal knowledge, which means Krishna's energies, his material and spiritual energies. So that's basically Aishvarya Gyan. But also he will give him Vigyan, which is many times to say as realization, or Prabhupada translates it here as numinous, which means about Krishna's personality and his sweetness. And so Madhurya Gyan. And both are important, as we know, because first you need to know how great Krishna is, because then that makes us humble, makes us understand that yes, there's the Supreme Person, we have to surrender to Him, and so then naturally you think, oh, what's my position, so I have to serve Him. But then to really serve Him in pure love, for that then we need Vigyan as well, knowledge of His sweetness, of how beautiful He is and how sweet His dealings are with His devotees and so on. So then understanding that, then naturally we want to serve in great love. And at the same time, that it means we can also realize knowledge, we can also understand that from our personal experience as well, that as we get the theoretical knowledge, understand that yes, we have to perform devotional service, and then as we do it, then we also get the reciprocation of slowly realizing the sweetness of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. Like discussed it in the previous chapter when it was explained how Lord Brahma saw the beautiful smile of the Lord, of how Krishna's reciprocation with the devotees is that the devotees don't expect anything in return for performing the devotional service, but Krishna does give them something all the time, and that is revealing His sweetness more and more. In that way, letting them enjoy the unlimited bliss of drinking His sweetness. So, and again, Krishna here, he very boldly, or like, how do you say, declares that yes, I'm not holding anything back. He says, Asheshataha, without end, whatever I tell you in full. So get ready, Arjuna. And then one might ask, well, how can he say that? Like we know even Ananta Shesh, he has been glorifying the Lord since time immemorial, and he has not come to an end with his unlimited mouths. So how can Krishna say, I'm just here in this few pages, I'm gonna tell you everything? But then understand everything in the sense that, he's giving all the principles of understanding him. Obviously, no one can ever understand all the details, or know all the details. But he's... So from that we understand again also how amazing this Achintya Veda Tattva is to understand. That Krishna himself says that's knowing him in full. And knowing this, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So in the first two verses he explains how important and how great this knowledge is that he's going to tell, and then in the third verse he explains how rare it is for someone to achieve that knowledge. The famous verse, Manushyanam sahasrisho kashchit yatadisitaye yatatam apasidanam kashchimam vetitattvataha. That out of thousands of men one may endeavor for perfection, and of very few may attain perfection, but even out of those, very few may be able to know me. And then in the verses 4 to 12, Krishna is talking about his energy, so Aishvargyan. First about his material energy, then about his spiritual energy, of which we are part of, and he's also substantiating by that explaining that it's my energies, that he's the supreme proprietor of everything, as we know from Ishopanishad, Ishavastimidam Sarvam. So, first material energy, we know, Bhumira Punalova Yuhoka Manopodureva Chahankarite Yamme Pinna Prakrirash, that earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. And so, but besides these, in the next verse he explains there's the para prakriti, besides the apara prakriti. So he says, aparing mitasyan yam praktim virime param jiva bhuta mahabhav yo yayedam daryate chagat. And of course we know that's of material and spiritual, and then within spiritual energy, as Krishna explains here, there's distinction still between Tatastha Shakti and his internal potency. And we are part of the Tatastha Shakti, that's why we can misuse our free will to come under the material energy as well. And so, explaining how he is the proprietor of everything, then in the 6th verse he explains how he is also the creator and the destroyer of everything. She says, Itatyunini bhutani sarvanityupadadaya aham kritsnasa jagadaha prabhavaha pralyastata. That all created beings have the source in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. And then in 7th verse, and in the series of verses, then he explains in more detail how he is also not only creator and destroyer, but also the maintainer of everything. So, and the first 2 lines of the 7th verse are very famous, Prabhupada will quote many times, because from that we understand Krishna himself telling that he, the personality, is the supreme, there's nothing beyond him. So he says, Mata parataram nanyat kinchirastiranan chaya mayi sarvamidam protam sutrimanikana. That, O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. And His Grace Kamsari Sena Prabhu was recently in his class explaining this analogy, which is, simple but so amazing actually, of this a thread. That how Krishna is behind everything, is the foundation of everything, but yet he's doing it in such a way that conditioned souls are not able to see him. So just as the simple analogy he's giving here, if you have a necklace, or a pearl necklace or something, you can't see the thread, although without a thread there's no question of being a necklace, then the pearls would just be anywhere. So it's the thread which holds everything together. And similarly it's Krishna who is the foundation of everything. But how, in terms of the material of the energies, as impersonal, from his impersonal aspect, from Brahman, comes also the material energy then, and also as the supersoul in his localized aspect, he enters even every atom, as we know. And yeah, and then in the verses, following verses after that, he's explaining how he's not only the creator of everything, the destroyer, the foundation of everything, the source, proprietor, but he is also the essence of everything, like of all the principles. Like we hear that in more elaborately, he tells that in the 10th chapter also. And so here, starting with, I think with Rasoham Apsukantiya, that I'm the taste of water, that, you know, there's no question of tasting anything if there's no water. Like Ganesh and Govindapur yesterday was reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita about how Mahaprabhu is instructing Srila Rupa Goswami about the different rasas, and how, and the Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is, or so I can't remember, or is it also spoken by Mahaprabhu himself, how he compares all those rasas to the elements as well, of which of, like, we know the gross elements come from the more subtle elements. So from sound sound is in ether, the only quality present is sound, and then further air has touch as well, and then fire has form, and water has taste, and earth also has fragrance, smell. So yeah, and so some of these examples Krishna is giving here, along with some others, or yeah, we can quickly go through, because it also, yeah, it's still, all of that is understanding basically Krishna's Krishna's Abheda aspect, yeah, of how how he's present everywhere, how he's not, because everything is his energy, so everything depends on him and everything is him. And so yeah, Rasam Apsikantiya Prabhasmi Chashi Suryaho, that he is also the illumination of sun and moon. Like Prabhupada, he would many times also quote these verses because it helps to be able to see Krishna more everywhere, because those kind of things we see in our everyday life. And so Prabhupada would say, yeah, who is not drinking water, who is not seeing sunlight. So when we see those things, we should always understand that that is the principle behind it, the active principle, that is Krishna. And so Prabhasmi Sashishoyo Pranava Sarva Vedeshu, that we know all the Vedic mantras, they start with Om, and that Om is also representing Krishna. And Shabda Ke, that as we just discussed, in ether, there's sound. So whenever you hear something that we can understand, at least there has to be ether. Of course, where we are, there's all the way down to earth, the most gross element, and ether is much more subtle. But so in outer space even, if sound is traveling there, then we understand at least there's ether present. And again, this active principle, sound in ether, that is Krishna. And Paurusham Narishu, in the ability in man. Ultimately ability in man is to be used for self-realization, otherwise it's not really taking advantage of the human life. But we can see in general that what distinguishes man from lower forms of life like animals is that we have the ability to not simply act according to instinct and like animals do, but we can use our willpower to direct our energies to make certain achievements. And that, again, that superior ability, that is, the principle is Krishna. And yeah, and similarly we hear the fragrance in earth and so on. And Mataji was yesterday quoting Bijam Mam Sarvabhutanam, that's in verse 10 here as well, of how Krishna is the seed-giving father of everything. And so with verse then 12 to 13, Krishna is explaining of how all of that obviously are all material examples, so they are all under the three modes of nature. And so then he is explaining that, to sum up, that the modes of nature themselves, they are also my energy, they are under me, and therefore obviously I'm not under them. But all the living beings in this material world, they are working under these modes of nature, thinking themselves free, but they are not free. They are simply controlled by the modes of nature. So understanding that everyone is, these modes are so powerful that everyone is under their control except the creator of the modes, Krishna himself. So then you should surrender to him. So if you are sane, and that's what Krishna tells in the famous verse 7.14. Tiviya gunamayi mama maya durataya maya mamiva yaprapatante maya mitam tarantite. That this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. And then the question may arise, which Prabhupada explains elaborately in the purports there, of, well, then everyone who is a little intelligent should immediately surrender to Krishna. But why don't we see that? Why is almost no one surrendered to Krishna in this material world? So that Krishna is explaining that then in 7.15, that Namam dushkrina tomodha prapatante naradamaha mayaya parita yaina asuram bhavamashita. That those who, and Prabhupada explains here the word dushkriti, that kriti means meritorious work. So Prabhupada explains for any to achieve anything, any great plans that you make, or all the industrialization and all of that we see, it all requires a lot of intelligence, a lot of meritorious work. But if that is not used for self-realization, for the pleasure of Krishna, then it is misused, and that's why Krishna calls them dushkriti. And who are those dushkriti? They are the mudas, those who are grossly foolish, who, like the example is given with the ass, who work just like a donkey, working very hard to get simply what they could get without even working, just to get a little grass. Mudas, so the other next, Naradamas, the lowest of mankind. Those who apparently are very civilized, but who actually don't follow real religious principles to realize Krishna. And then the Mayaya Parita Yanas are those who have a lot of knowledge apparently, material knowledge, but their knowledge is stolen by Maya, stolen by illusion, because they misuse it. They don't use it for self-realization. And that's why they might be so knowledgeable in many things, but then that's why they can't understand simple facts like that we are not this body, that there's a creator. They speculate things on the origin of the universe and all of that in very crazy theories. And then, of course, the asuras, those who are openly atheistic, completely envious of the Lord. And in contrast to that, then in 7.16 he says, of course, those who do approach him, the sukritis, who are those who have sukriti. I'll go a bit faster now. And then, so Krishna glorifies, even though they come with those whom he's talking about here are not pure devotees, but who have different material motives, like the artatis, those desiring wealth, the arthas, those who are in distress, the jignasu, those who are inquisitive, and the jnanis, those who are searching for knowledge. So, but still Krishna, Prabhupada is explaining there that why is Krishna still appreciating them is because even doing it for a wrong motive, still there's some exchange of affection. Still they come to the right source, still they understand, in contrast to the dushkritis, that yes, there is a Supreme Lord and I'm dependent on Him, and I humbly have to beg Him for whatever I need. And so that's why he calls them udara, magnanimous. And still he points out of them, the greatest are those, the jnanis, those who have actual knowledge of me. And so much so that Krishna actually calls them as Atma Eva. They're as dear to me as my very own self. And from that, of course, we can understand that what about then the pure devotees who have no tinge of just for the sake of wanting knowledge, but who simply want to please Him? Of course, they are, we can understand from that, they are even more dear to Him than His own self, as the Lord in other places also declares, actually. So, and then in text 19, he explains how those in knowledge, how they also eventually, some may come to fully realize me, as Bahunam Janmanamante Yananam Kyanavan Mam Prapatyate Vasudeva Saramati Samahatma Sudulabaha. And it's interesting there also again on the Achinta Beda Beda principle, how those great souls in great knowledge, they understand that I am everything, Vasudeva is everything. But whom do they surrender to? They don't surrender to everything, they surrender to him, the person. So they fully understand that yes, everything is non-different from Krishna, but still he is beyond it, he is the very source of it. As in 9th chapter he more specifically explains, like Kamsai quoted that Nachamatstani Bhutani that Mamatma Bhuta Bhavana, that myself is the very source of all creation. And then in the following text he's explaining of those who don't even approach him personally, like before he glorified, even those who come from material wealth, but then those who are even more eager for material enjoyment, so to say, who are not and more deluded, who are not ready to or able to understand Krishna as the Supreme Lord and that everything comes from him and so on, that they then go to demigods. And also another reason, Krishna himself in Bhagavatam declares that his special mercy upon devotees who are a bit attached to material possessions, material enjoyment, is to take it away from them. So, that frightens then those who are really attached to material enjoyment. So that's why then he is explaining that Kamastastya, those whose knowledge is stolen by lust, by material desires, they then approach the demigods. Prapadatyan anya devataha tam tam niyamam astaya prakritiyan yatasvaya. And then in the following 2 verses he is explaining how even though they go to demigods, they don't want to think about Krishna himself, but they don't realize that actually it's no one else other than him who is running the show, who not only is, before he explained how he's the proprietor of everything, so everything is provided by him, not by demigods. They, as his servants, they may then give the benedictions and may provide the material facilities, but originally it's given by Krishna. But not only that, he's explaining there that also it is Krishna who gives, and imagine it's how merciful Krishna is, that he is not like some people foolishly might think that God is anxious about maintaining his position or something like that. No, he's of course creating first of all the demigods, and he's empowering them. And like one reason is Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu was explaining how for Krishna, as we said, those who are too lusty, they are not able to turn to him directly. So then Krishna provides this route through the demigods that at least somehow they come towards him, rather than those who are completely atheistic and don't want to follow so much, so that they don't want to follow any of the rules given by Krishna. As he explains in the 16th chapter, then Yaha Shastra Vidum Motsricha. So he's still happier than that by getting them towards him through the demigods. Like Prabhu was explaining the analogy, it's kind of like a king who has a servant who doesn't want to serve him directly anymore, or a son, for example. But then he at least is happy if he comes back to the kingdom and serves his ministers. So the demigods are like that. They are like Krishna's ministers in this universal affairs. Yeah, thank you. And so Krishna, being completely non-envious and no false ego or anything like that, obviously, but full of mercy. So he also gives the faith to the devotees to a certain demigod that someone desires to worship, and then empowers obviously the demigod to bestow the benediction. So it says, Yo yam yam tanum bhakta shradaya chetamicchati tasya chadam shradham tameva vidadam yaham. That I make, like someone has some preliminary faith for some demigod, wants to worship him, then seeing that, Krishna immediately then helps him and makes this faith steady. That's achalam. Like we know, chala means movable living entities. Many times you come across like that. And then in 22 he explains that, yes, that it's also, I am the one who is bestowing actually the benedictions. Even though they very faithfully worship the demigod, think, oh, he's the one giving and I don't depend on, or like, yeah, he's the one I'm depending on, but actually you always depend on Krishna. So, be quick. And then in 23 he explains again that, well, but on top of that, what they don't understand is that whatever they obtain is, after all, it's all temporary. Even the demigods themselves are temporary, as we know, and so thus he calls them alpamedasam, less intelligent. And then in 24 he says that, but those who think that Krishna has attained his personality, that he was impersonal before, in other words, the Mayavadis, that they are even abudaya. And yeah, so and one point is to note there that obviously, but those who follow the path of impersonalism, if they do it properly, then they're very much detached from material gross enjoyment, as in contrast to the demigod worshippers who do it, all of that simply to get sense gratification directly for the material senses, the gross senses. Whereas Mayavadis, they don't do that. They want subtle sense gratification. They want the pleasure of thinking that's the highest pleasure to merge into Brahman. But yeah, that simple detachment is not a qualification for seeing Krishna. That's what he explains then in the next verse, that he reserves his right, the right to reveal himself. You can't see him unless you get his mercy. So that's Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritaha modayam nabichanati loko mamachamavyayam. And then again here, so Krishna is saying yogamaya samavritaha, that I'm covered by my internal potency. But then someone foolishly might think that, well, if he's covered, this means then he also becomes ignorant. Like if someone in the material world, if we get covered by something, then we lose our vision around us, then we become ignorant. But obviously in Krishna's case, that's not the case. Rather, he covers, the example is given like the sun. When the sun is covered by the clouds, it doesn't mean the sun is actually covered, it means our vision of the sun is covered, because after all the sun is creating the clouds actually by evaporating the water. And so to substantiate that, then in verse 26 Krishna declares again his omniscience, which he similarly did already in the 4th chapter. But here again where he says, Vidaham samatitani vartamanani charchana pavishyane cha bhutani mam tivedana kaschana. And so that, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me, no one knows. And so then he further explains, why does no one know me? That is because we are all under the delusion of dualities. We all see in the material worlds everything under the dualities, which arise from desire and hate, as Krishna is explaining here. Icha devesha samutena tvanta mohana bharata sarva bhutani samoham sargyanti parantapa. So that all living entities are born into delusion under the dualities arisen from the dualities of which arise. So I'll read the translation. O son of Bharata, O conqueror of the four, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So that, and Prabhupada explains there that this Icha and Dvesha is you can take it specifically that Icha, desire, is those who after material enjoyment, and Dvesha, envious, those who even wanting to give up that but still then too envious to surrender to Krishna, then wanting themselves to become Krishna, to merge into him. And yeah, so yeah, we're pretty much out of time. Then of course he substantiates further that how can you come out of the delusion that first of all you have to give up all sensual activities and Isham Tuantakatam Papam Chanam Punyakarmanam Tetvanda Moha Nirmukta Panchante Mam Trita Vrataha, and engage in pious activities, and then being purified you can have this determination to actually engage in fully devotional service. And yeah, but we know of course in our case we wouldn't have that by ourselves, but it's by the mercy of the devotees that we can engage in devotional service and become purified and realize this Krishna in full in terms of principles, understanding this Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. And yeah, I think we'll stop here. If there's any comments or questions. Yes, Prabhu.
Just going back to that point about, you said that Rama's prayer is, please not let me think that I am the doer.
Yeah.
So essentially, I'm sorry, Prabhu was explaining that Rama is only under the influence of the material element intelligence. So in that context, should the fallen conditioned souls pray in the same way as Lord Rama, saying, please don't let me think myself but demigods, or should the fallen conditioned souls think that that's the very high prayer, only people under the influence of the subtle material element?
Yeah, no, I mean that's for everyone, obviously, that we, as Krishna explains earlier in the 4th chapter, 327, that prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvacha ahankara itiyame now I mixed up with that line. Vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. So, under the influence of false ego, the conditioned souls don't realize that in the material world everything is happening by the modes, and they want to think themselves the doer. So it's, to come out of this illusion, it's for everyone that we have to realize that we are not the doer. But of course, yes, we can pray like that also and meditate on it, but at the same time, we are not jnanis, and we wouldn't even have the ability anyway, the intellectual and determination and all of that, to simply always meditate, thinking about it, and I'm not the doer. No, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we simply engage in this simple process of devotional service, starting with hearing and chanting, that we gradually become purified and will realize it. Of course, at the same time, we also hear about it, and remind ourselves about it, and catch ourselves while doing service that we sometimes feel, oh, I'm getting too proud, I'm trying to take credit for what I'm doing, I shouldn't do that, sorry, Gopinanda, I want to offer it to you, please help me, I want to do it as your instrument. So like that. Okay, thank you. Kantarachima Bhaktam Ke Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ke Jai.